Welcome, conference participants. I'm Pam Yankeelove, Director of Research at the University of Louisville Traeger Institute. We are so thankful for all those who took the time to welcome us this morning and for the governor's introduction of our panelists. Mary Vessels, one of our panels, will not be able to be here today. However, she shared a video with us that's been posted in the foyer, found in the left-hand column of the Eventtree platform. Today is Mrs. Vessels' 96th birthday, and we wish Mrs. Vessels a very happy birthday. Unfortunately, Father Jim Flynn and Maria Clay are also unable to be with us due to personal and health circumstances. Here's just a little bit about who they are. Father Flynn has been a priest for over 60 years and has had an impactful role with the Archdiocese of Louisville throughout decades. Marie Clay has received a wide range of recognition and honors over her life, which include the Bethune National Council of Negro Women, the 11th Ward Community Services, Good Neighbor, and numerous proclamations from the city and the county government officials. We will miss their participation in this panel. Now, I would like to introduce our special guest who will moderate our panel discussion, Ms. Sandy Markwood, someone who has participated in our conference for years. Sandy Markwood is a national advocate for aging issues and a champion for ensuring that older adults have the best supports to age well at home and in their community. As the CEO of U.S. Aging since 2002, she is committed to ensuring that our society values and supports people across the lifespan. This commitment has taken many forms, including advocacy with multiple administrations and on Capitol Hill for the passage of legislation aimed at supporting older adults, including access to critical information, in-home services, and caregiver support, and leading numerous U.S. aging campaigns to support the needs of older adults as they age. Hi, Sandy. So glad you're with us.
Pam, thank you so much. And I am thrilled to be with you. I only wish that I could be there in person because this is one of my favorite conferences of all of the conferences I get to because of the people that are involved. With you involved, Dr. Fall, Barbara Gordon, and the entire staff of the Traeger Institute and the great work that you do there. But I also really want to commend you on the theme of this year's conference, which is incredible. I want to thank you for having me here this morning to kick off the conference with a conversation with some inspirational and incredible older adults who are local legends and who epitomize the theme of the conference, aging inspired, aging reinvigorated. For the past 2 years, these individuals, as well as others who are not on the stage with us this morning, have heroically inspired and through necessity and innovation reinvigorated their communities as well as the entire aging network to meet the needs of the most vulnerable. As we all know, the COVID pandemic hit our nation hard, but especially hard where it hit the older adults and people with disabilities that the Aging Network provides services and supports to. Given the severe impact, the pandemic shined a light locally on a statewide basis and nationally on the needs of older adults, as well as on the resilience of older adults and the Aging Network that serves them, that I am so proud to be a part of. From the surveys and reports and testimonials from the nation's area agencies on aging and other aging service providers, what we know is that the numbers of older adults in Kentucky and across the nation who need services and supports to live well, to live optimally at home and in the community has increased during the pandemic. What we also know is that the complexity of the needs of older adults that the Aging Network is serving has also increased. People are in greater need and have more complex needs. And we also know that the overall health of older adults being served has worsened during the pandemic due to the lack of access to health care and health-related services in the home, now referred to as the social determinants of health. And the fact that the increasing numbers of older adults who are facing social isolation has also increased. And as a result of that, made social engagement a core part of the services of the Aging Network, as well as the healthcare network. And we now realize that addressing social isolation and loneliness of older adults and their caregivers is no longer just a nice thing to do, it's a necessary thing to do. And that social isolation is a public health crisis. And also, during the pandemic, we also realized the fact that we should have known, and we do know, and we will address moving forward, that all of the needs of older adults that are being faced by older adults in Kentucky and throughout the nation are amplified when we're looking at the needs of diverse older adults. But like the amazing individuals we're going to hear from this morning, the Aging Network has heroically met the needs of the most vulnerable among us. Aided by a doubling of emergency funding from the COVID relief bills, leaders are also coming to us this morning and really looking at the ways that communities, individuals can step up to be able to meet the challenges, and have during the pandemic met the challenges to ensure that those among us, those who are most vulnerable among us, get their needs addressed. They've done this by stepping up and stepping out to create social change, by helping those in need, by focusing on what we can do and what we can do together, and focus instead of focusing on what we can't. And they've also inspired others and created new partnerships through their commitment and through their passion. These are the traits that drove the changes during the past 2 years that reimagined, reset, and reinvigorated the Aging Network and aging services for the future. These are the traits that are illustrated in each of the local heroes we have on our stage this morning, each of whom vividly exemplifies optimal aging. Each of our speakers' life work embodies the Margaret Mead quote, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world," because indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So let's jump into our conversation with these incredible committed leaders. We are so pleased to have State Representative Birch with us today, as well as Ms. Jones. What amazing icons, what amazing heroes you have in your community who really, again, exemplify thriving throughout your lifespan and thriving as you age. So I'm going to jump into some questions for our incredible panelists, and also will encourage at the end for you all to ask them questions as well. So as I get started, I am just going to start out with some general questions that really address the situation that we're all facing today, but actually to delve into how they've tackled these issues, challenges, and made them into opportunities. So first, and I'll turn to Ms. Jones first, and then to Representative Birch. Please share with us what and who has inspired you the most to continue to flourish as you age. Ms. Jones?
Well, the major person in my life has been my mother, that has been the rock and the foundation of my life. She encouraged me to listen to my body, because we as young kids was always carried to the hospital or the clinic that was in our neighborhood. And she told us the importance of keeping yourself well and upkept. We wasn't too strong on foods, healthy foods in that time in my life, because during that time we were very, very economically poor, because we could not afford some of the higher prices of food at that time. But my dad was a country man, country boy, and we had a garden. So from that garden, we were able to have some of the vegetables. He knew how to grow collard greens, turnip greens, and those kinds of foods, corn, that we would have to eat. And then we only lived about 8 miles from the city line, the state line of Mississippi and Tennessee. I'm Southern born, born in Memphis, Tennessee in 1933. So those around listening today my age can understand the trials that we had with food, but also we had to make sure that we were kept healthy with what we had. My aunt would raise chickens, and my dad would go down to Waltz, Mississippi, and he would get the chickens prepared to bring back to my mother so we would have chicken on Sunday. That was a tradition. Everybody had good old fried chicken on Sundays, whereas the tradition has changed. Now, on Sundays, I have good old baked chicken or even good old roast because it's more healthy than the oils that you receive into your bodies and the grease. So keeping myself up and remembering to listen to my body. When my mother began to say, listen to your body, I was a little bit confused because I couldn't believe that my body was talking. But now I know my body talks. The aches, the pains, getting to your doctor, getting your exams each year. And I do that every year on my birthday. I get my physical. And I watch and listen to how the reactions of my body. And I know the value of keeping myself up and keeping myself busy. Because if you continue to sit and say, oh my gosh, I got this ache this morning. Oh, you know, I'm 50 years old, I'm 60 years old. Oh, I can't do that. Then you begin to slide down the hill. But if you say to yourselves that age is just a number, and you look around in your community and you see things that needs to be done, things that you can do to make a better world. And that's what started me on my pathway of loving and the kindness that was brought from my families to me to keep on keeping on till I reached the 89 mark.
Well, that is wonderful. And I mean, you just embodied, you know, some of the major mantras of positive aging. So thank you so much. State Representative Birch, question to you. So what and who inspired you to do the incredible things that you've done throughout your legislative career and your life?
Well, we can start with, I started working when I was about 11 years old. So that's the only thing I really do know is work. That's 79 years. But I think what I had to do is because of my family situation, I had to work. And from that time on, it was just, plus I would add that I was a kid that was raised in a parochial system. I had nuns who taught me, and believe me, you were encouraged, sometimes physically, to get to work and to play a part in your community. I learned that, and it seems like that has stuck with me my whole career in my life. But like I said, I started working when I was 11. When I was 13, I got a small paper route. By the time I was 16, I had the largest route in Louisville, had about 500 customers. And I was making $80 a week, a 16-year-old kid. And back in the Depression days, that was big money. And I went to the Navy when I was 17 years old. And I tried to get in when I was 16, and I think primarily because of my home situation. And I learned the service there. You work together. Your shipmates were your family. And from there, when I got out of the Navy, I went to Bellarmine, and I was one of the few graduates that did not have a high school diploma. I got my high school diploma just about 8 years ago, but I had a GED. And like I said, and I got out of the Bellarmine in '59. I had a lot of time on my hands, and we got involved in a neighborhood project of putting sewers in our street, and I worked in that. And that was the first time we used the Kentucky statutes for that. And from then on, it was I started doing precinct work, and from precinct work to being a group man and then a legislative district chairman to become a state representative. And that required work. I walk precincts, I walk precincts, and I walk precincts. Not once, not twice, but many, many times. And that's probably why my legs are shot. But when I got in the legislature, and actually getting involved in the neighborhood thing is what caused me to really get involved in politics, because we were fighting the very system that was inviting us to do something. And I figured we need a better voice in that there. So when I got in the legislature, I started looking for areas that we needed to improve. And my second term, I became a chairman of Labor and Industry, which I've always supported labor. And I see that no bills ever come out of that committee that hurt labor. Then a few years later, I became chairman of Health and Welfare, where I really met where I hit my pace, you might say, is I served as chairman for 30 years. Nobody's ever done that, and probably never will. But the opportunity presented itself then. I was able to deal with the children's issues and early childhood development and graduated driver's license, child support, organ transplants. All these were not easy bills to pass. You would think they would be easy, but they were not. And then I've done over 200 pieces of legislation. They all serve families and the constituents that I represent and all the constituents of Kentucky. And but when the Democrats lost the majority, of course, I lost my chairmanship, and that has slowed me down as far as not what I want to do, but the things that I could do have been slowed down because of that. And but I still fight for these same issues: good health care, good education, and good jobs. These three things all tie together. You've got to have healthy people. You've got to have educated people in order to attract business to your community. That I've made that my total life work, you might say, as a legislator. And when I first ran for office, I made three promises. I would never vote for a bill that hurt my people. I would never lie to them, and I'd always be available. Every Saturday, I have open meetings in my house. I never know who's going to walk through that door, whether they're armed or not. But I have donuts and coffee as long as they last. And I've had as many as 160 show up, and I've had as many as no show up. But they know I'm available. People stop me in shopping centers, and they ask me if I'm still having my Saturday meetings. And I've always said yes. It's 49 years of doing that. I don't know any legislator that does that. And so most of them said I wouldn't have them people in my house. I said, well, they pay my salary, and I wouldn't have this house. And but this was the type of thing that I feel like I've got to work. I got to be doing something. I got to do something to change the way we approach how we're doing things right now. And I'll continue to do that till I take my last breath.
And you do it amazingly well. I have to say that, I grew up, and my parents always told me that there's two things you have complete control over, and it's your attitude and your effort. And, as I'm listening to you both, how you all have such a positive attitude and you have put your efforts into making your community, your neighborhoods, your world a better place. And I have to say also, since it's breakfast time, Ms. Jones, I want to come to your house to have your baked chicken. And Representative Birch, I'm going to show up for coffee and donuts.
I do chicken too.
You do chicken too. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, you're making me hungry. Well, also, we've talked about the issue of the pandemic and for the fact that the last 2 years have been challenging. They've been challenging for all of us. Social isolation, there's been social unrest, and just challenges in trying to even figure out what normal life is anymore, right? I'm sure, like many of us, that you all have felt some challenges as well and may have lost a little bit of energy at time to time during this pandemic. But in keeping with the conference theme, what has reinvigorated you to continue to age optimally in spite of all of the challenges that either you have faced, your family's faced, or what you see others in your community facing? So how have you reinvigorated yourself to get through this pandemic? And Ms. Jones, I'll turn to you to start us out.
When you in the community and you see how downward your community is going, not only due to the working conditions, it's due to the health conditions, it's due to your housing. And if you have a care in your heart, you're going to get tired. As we old folks say, you're going to get sick and tired of seeing this kind of mistreatment in your community. And you ask yourself questions. And in my early years, I just got married and all, and began to raise my family. Due to those conditions, I did not want to see my children suffer under the same sufferings that I had to go through. That was a determination in my mind that you have to move. And married to my husband, that his father was the first boarding school for Black children way, way down in Mississippi, 20 miles from Jackson, Mississippi. He started on the log, and he had graduated from the University of Iowa, which he could have had a wonderful job there. But he decided to travel as a hobo to the South. And he started this school under a tree by a little pond in the deep woods of Mississippi. There today, this school is 104 or 5 years old. That's educating. It's the largest Black boarding school. He decided to educate the head, the heart, and the mind. And with my husband being reared in that atmosphere, he brought it on to increase that I had received from my mother. And knowing too the suffering that in the deep South that we have suffered, was my determination. After we moved, I came to Louisville in 1949. That it gave me the spirit to say that I want to make a change. And some of the segregation that I had suffered, some of the bad experiences, I was told once that I could not work in an office with some other ladies because I was Black. And those things, and talking with my mother, and getting involved with other people, and I say thank God today to folks like Senator Georgia Davis Powers. The First Lady invited me to her home that I could get to meet leadership like Dr. Martin Luther King and Reverend Abernathy and those folks. And praise God to her for inviting me and getting me started into really knowing too that you can't fight this battle by yourself, that you have to become a part of something. And from then on, I became a part. I became involved with Anne Brayton, which some people was not very familiar. But this was a woman very popular. Let me take she was not a very popular person. The Braydons wasn't popular. But what touched my heart was they had the determination that they wanted to make a better world. There should be no separation here. We're all God's children, and color is not involved. And I say too about things that's going on now. When we look at leadership for our communities, we don't look at the color. We look at the love, the capability, the humanitarian work that they have did to try to make this a better world. And being inspired by these folks and growing up like I grew up, my mother never heard my mother say anything bad about anybody. Only thing she would say is, we have to pray. And that has been with me all through my life. I have not wanted to throw a brick or hit someone in the head or say some bad language to somebody because they mistreated me. Only thing I can do for you, I can pray for you. And I can also work with the system, my leadership, to let them know that, hey, this can't go like this. Make a phone call. Talk to your representatives. Go see your representatives. Work with your children in the school system. We have to train them while they're young so they can grow up with a loving mind. As my father-in-law said, educate the head, the heart, and the mind. And keep this going. It doesn't happen overnight. I'm 89 years old. All of it is not right. But you keep on marching. You keep on pushing it. And when you lay down to take your sleep, then there are others that has realized what has been done from all of this, that they will keep on carrying that torch to make this as that Reverend Jesse Jackson said, the rainbow. And the more I look at my family, I look at the rainbow. And I am so proud of this rainbow that I see.
That's amazing. And I think that, and I love your rainbow analogy because, you were talking about all the struggles that people have gone through, but you kept pushing on and based on your parents' perspectives on what's good in life and pushing on. And it sounds to me like even throughout this pandemic with all of the different challenges, you've kept pushing on. How inspirational. State Representative Birch, how about you? How have you reinvigorated yourself and looking at the challenges that we faced in the past 2 years? When I hear about your 200 bills and everything, you have just kept, moving the ball forward and doing all the right things. But, how have you gotten through the challenges and kept yourself focused and reinvigorated during the pandemic?
One thing is you have to be like the junkyard dog. When you bite into something, you better hold on to it. If you have a belief that this is right, then you have to fight for it. I feel sorry for President Biden and for Governor Beshear because this epidemic has caused them to put their own goals on the back burner in order to deal with an issue. And it's a funny thing, the American public don't seem to appreciate that. And this is a sad thing. Here's two guys trying to save their life, and they're running away from it, running right into the frying pan, you might say. First of all, I got all my booster shots, including my flu shot. Secondly, I follow the rules. I wear my mask. I don't go anywhere without it. I keep it in my pocket at all time, and I wear it. I wear it straight through the legislature. When we're on the floor or anything else, I try to follow the rules because I want to stay healthy. We've been fortunate. My wife and I have not been bothered with this. My kids, one of my grandkids got the virus, but he got over it rather quickly and didn't have any after effects from it that we know of. And but you have to stay focused on your goals. My goals are always 4 inches further than I can reach because I got to keep on reaching for it and to achieve the types of things that I think need to be done in order to change this world. I only work to do things that benefit humanity. Like we talked about the rainbow. My son-in-law is African American. My grandchildren are African American, and but they're the rainbow. They're better behaved than my other grandchildren are, as a matter of fact. And but we're proud to have him in our family, and that's what everybody should feel like in this world toward anybody, no matter what they're, either Asian or African American or German or whatever you happen to be. People should be accepted for what they are, not what color they are or how their eyes are slanted or anything else. They should be accepted as they are. In my neighborhood, my next door neighbor, in fact, 3 of my next door neighbors are from Vietnam. I got several African American neighbors. They come down and we walk together on our street. And we've got Mexicans, And we're really what you might say a rainbow neighborhood. And we help one another. And this is the thing, if you're going to be a neighbor, be a neighbor. I remember, of course, I don't cut grass anymore, but when I did, I would cut 5 yards in my neighborhood. To me, when you get on a ride more, it lets your mind drift. You don't have to be cluttered up with a bunch of stuff, and you can just relax and let your mind relax. And before I knew it, I was in my neighbor's yard. Before I knew it, I was in my next neighbor's yard across the street. And it just seemed to come natural to me. And like working, it's natural to work and to want to change things. When I think originally I mentioned I got involved in putting sewers in our street, we had to fight the neighbors to get these sewers in. And you couldn't even live in your yards from April to October because the septic tank overflow was so bad. And we billed everybody $965 to get sewers put in. We put them in, and I gave everybody a $175 refund, which paid to tie their sewers into their house. And then I went along and I said, boy, this street is awful dark. We need street lights. All hell broke loose. We don't want street lights. Well, the very people that complained about it, when a street light went out, they called me to get the street light turned back. So, you have to, sometimes the issue you work on is not popular. You have to sell your idea. You have to convince people this is the right thing to do. Give you an example, when I did organ transplant legislation, I had to get that out of 3 committees in order to get it where we could pass it. And when I got to the House floor, I had people on the right hand of the gallery that needed transplants, and I had people on the left hand that had transplants. And when I started, I said, I'd like to direct you to the right side of the gallery. These people need transplants. That's how important this bill is. These are the people that receive transplants, and that's really how important the bill is, because they're enjoying good health again. Passed that bill, no problem, got in the Senate, it got the consent calendar, it went without any debate at all. But I had to sell the fact that, see, a lot of these you might call Christians, Bible Christians, that believe your body's coming back. And they didn't want to, their problem was, if you take the heart out and transplant it, I won't have a heart when I come back. That kind of nonsense that you have to put up with. Personally, if there is a second coming and a body coming back, I want one that works. And that's roughly how I feel about it. It's going to keep me going until I take that last breath. That sounds good.
Well, and I just wanted to follow up with you because, again, you are Kentucky's longest serving and oldest state legislature. Of all of the incredible legislation that you've passed, over 200 bills you mentioned, what bill are you proudest of? Can you pick one?
Well, one, I lost my granddaughter when she was 17 to a traffic accident. She wasn't, my other grandkids think she was my favorite, and she probably was. She was with me every day. But she was unique, and like all my grandchildren are. But I did the graduated driver's license. It saved many, many, many young people, because you can't put a 16-year-old new driver in a car that's got 450 horsepower and think they're going to go 20 miles an hour. It ain't going to happen. And that was what I'm proud of. I think the one I'm most proud of is the organ transplant. It was one of the first in America, and it was the one that a lot of other states copied. And and used. Of course, we've amended it quite a bit since then there, but those are two that stand out in my mind. Of course, I've done child support and grandparents' rights to see their grandchildren, things like that there, but those two stand out to me as being important to me.
That's wonderful and incredible. And I am just so impressed with not only your history of your legislative career, but also what drives you to do the great work that you do, which is to make the world a better place. This is a panel of inspirational people. And speaking of inspirational people, Ms. Jones, could you share with us your time and experience in Selma, Alabama, and your being there with Martin Luther King Jr. and Congressman John Lewis and so many other iconic leaders? What moments can you share with us about that day and how it changed you and how it's changed your perspectives as a civil rights advocate in working in Kentucky, in your community, but also the great impact that your work has done from a national perspective as well?
My civil rights movement goes way back, even when I was a kid, because I grew up in an integrated, which was unheard of in Louisville, but 17th and Newman was primarily African American, 16th and Newman was primarily white. So we worked at my aunt and uncle had a grocery store there on the corner of 16th, 17th and Newman Hill, and we all shopped there and we interfaced, we played together. You know, it was like we were brothers and sisters rather than just neighbors or friends. And then when I never, believe it or not, I never went to school with a black kid till I went to Bellarmine. In the Navy, we were not integrated at that time, but I had black friends. And I fall back on this. I had 6 months to go before I was discharged from the military. And I was talking to my friend, his name was Harris, he was a black dog. Telling him I was going to take flying lessons. And he thought for a while, he says, you know, Tom, I'm not going anywhere, but you can. He touched me at that time. I'd probably take that flying lesson and crash, and I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. And but he touched me at that particular time, and I wrote to Bellarmine and U of L. I got accepted, and from then on, you know, people. Primarily my district is a third African American, so I must be doing something right because I lived right there with them. You know, I didn't move away from my black neighbors, and this has helped me to accept people as they are, not what color they are or whatever else you hear about them. And at GE, I hired the first black scheduler. I hired the first woman scheduler. I did those types of things that were unheard of back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And I just held on to that there. And to my whole career in General Electric, I stuck to that. I was also a union organizer before I went into management. And so I knew what both sides of the track was. Actually, management and union should be locked hand in hand together. That some of them are at each other's throat all the time. But
you have just been amazing in how you've brought all of your life to be able to tackle civil rights issues in a way that has just seems like it's embedded in you. And Ms. Jones, I'd love to hear your response as well about how from a civil rights perspective you've come together. But I don't want to interrupt you.
I got one more story.
Sure.
And to give you an example, I was 18 and I come home on leave, and my cousin was a Nursling nun, and we took the streetcar. Those, I don't know if you all know what a streetcar is, but my partner here does. And got on the streetcar and we went up to visit with her. Well, there was a little black fellow sitting behind the conductor. And some big guy got on, and I think he said he was from Georgia or somewhere. Anyway, made some racial slurs and everything. And I was sitting there with my mom and brother, and we went about 4 blocks. And that was about all I could take of that guy. And the streetcar stopped at around 12th and Oak or somewhere like that. And I got up and I grabbed that guy and kicked him off. And I told him, I said, shut that door. Because he'd have killed me because I startled him and he couldn't respond fast enough for it. And I asked the driver, I said, why didn't you help this man? Well, that's how things were back in Louisville in those days. Louisville was very prejudiced too, but you can remember that when you were kids. And we've changed some, but some of us had to experience that and deal with people of other races in order to come to a conclusion that we're all human beings, we're all brothers and sisters, and we're all created by one person, and that's God.
Well, I think, and in saying that, I think that is so, I think that really sums up your legislative career. And it sums up, and I'm going to give Ms. Jones the last word, really sums up your life work as well. I'm just so impressed to be to have this opportunity to talk with you both. But Ms. Jones, could you just give us a sense from a civil rights perspective and the work that you've done? What's been, just give us insight from your perspective on how we can move this forward and how you see the vision for civil rights, not only in Louisville, but nationally, and how that really relates to your life's work.
Before Selma, we were, as the old folks say, we were well seasoned because we had a training camp. And that is where we went to get the true issue and the true feeling and the true love of how you protest. Dr. King had his men there that carried us through a training cycle. So when the marches began here in Louisville for open housing and public accommodation, we were well seasoned. We were seasoned not to react because the nasty word nigger or stuff was thrown at us or someone would push or shove us. We knew our mission, and we knew that fighting back was not going to make us reach our goal because we had been thoroughly trained by the older adults and by Dr. King, and we knew that he was a nonviolent person. So being involved here in my own home, going to jail, I think my last record was 27 times I was arrested right here in Louisville, just for open housing and public accommodation. Just because I did not want to go to White Castle at that time at 8th and Broadway and go to the back door and have my food thrown to me like I was a dog. Or not as well as they would the dogs. They might have put it in the dog's mouth, but they threw our bag to us. On 4th Street, we couldn't even try on clothing. I can remember the time that my mother, she always wore a hat on Sunday. That was tradition for Southern women. And she went in holiday hat box to buy a hat. And the clerk there put paper all over her head and then tried to put the hat on her head. But my mother pushed herself back. She said she thought she was falling. But I think my mother did it on purpose, pushed herself back so that would stop the clerk from putting all this paper over her head. So going through all of this here in my own home and seeing the effects and what had happened with Rosa Parks when Rosa refused to give up her seat. I was well seasoned when it came time to go to Selma. I had been in Mississippi helping my father-in-law and had been denied the right to vote. And believe it or not, the reason I was denied the opportunity to vote was because I did not sing the national anthem in the right tune. I was told by the sheriff in the voting place. I paid my poll taxes and everything. I was ready to vote. And I was constantly reminded of Girl. Everything that he said to me was derogatory, and he thought it hurt my feelings. But coming under the struggle I came under, I was well seasoned. I was ready. I was sick and tired, and I was just fed up. So when I got to Selma, I met my friend, Rose Sanders, and we prepared ourselves there. We had meetings in the churches at night, making the preparation. And we were told that if you can't take this abuse, because Bull Connor was constantly bringing out those fire hoses, which was very powerful. They were worse than the large, huge guns that they're shooting now, those fire hoses when they turned them on. And the dogs. And the dogs were not just trying to scare you, they were biting. We knew all of this, but we were prepared. And you have to prepare your mind, your heart, everything to this situation. You got to have the love to want to make a change. So therefore, we wanted to vote. We knew we had been sharecroppers and we had done all of the work. Been the house parents, the white families, children, brought those children, and the children loved us, but the parents wouldn't let us love us because we were Black folk. And we had raised those kids and we'd been through the storm. So we were ready now. We knew we were citizens and we wanted to vote. We made the crops, we picked the cotton, and we wanted to vote. So we had to go to the Capitol to make the change. So we went to Selma. People from all over the world came into Selma for that Sunday to march into the Capitol to demand our vote. We knew we wasn't going to get there. We knew that. But when we got halfway the bridge, I was on the fourth or fifth row from John Lewis. And when we got in the middle of the bridge, that's where the hoes, the dogs, and the men in the sheets and hoods began to attack us. And they didn't push or shove us. We were beaten and all. But the men in the movement, they covered us, the women. They put the women on the ground. They were pushing us to the ground, and they took their bodies and put on us. We didn't make it the first time, and we did not get discouraged because we didn't make it. We went back and got ourselves together again. This was, at this time, they didn't hurt us physically. They hurt us physically, but they didn't hurt our mind because we were determined that we were going to cross that bridge and we were going to the Capitol. The second time, it was such a disaster all over the country. People were upset. There were 3 times more people there walking with us to cross that bridge. And as we sang across that bridge, we knew that we weren't going to let nothing turn us around from voting. And that is why this day that I say to the young people, and they've got to know our history. They've got to know the price we paid for them to be able to go to the poll all comfortable. Some can even ride in a car. Some get lunch when they get there if they want some lunch, or coffee, or donuts, or what have you. All we got was mistreatment and beaten. Some of us died for the right to vote. And that is why that I'm saying that the history, the whole history of us should be taught in the curriculum of the schools so that we'll better let our children know and other children of color know that this is the most important thing in your life, is the almighty vote. That it could have been your grandparents or your great-grandparents way down yonder in the cotton fields that died for this opportunity to do the vote.
I am so impressed by your commitment, and also as you said, it's so important when we're talking about aging to realize that the older adults that are in your neighborhood, that are your neighbor, that are in your family, have that history. and to be able to ensure that we are enriched not only by the life's work that the two of you have done, but by sharing your history so that we can continue to move forward. I hope that everybody that has listened to this panel has been as inspired as I am by these amazing leaders. These people whose commitment, passion, and compassion has driven their life's work over the years appear only to have deepened with age. And I hope, like me, that after hearing them, that you're going to be invigorated to drive the changes that will be necessary in your work to ensure that every older adult can thrive and age optimally. I wish we had more time, but I can't tell you how much I appreciate the time that both of you have given to us. But remember, the change starts with all of us, and it also starts here at this conference. So I'm going to turn it back to Pam to close out the session. But again, thank you for everything the two of you have done and will continue to do to make this world a better place.
Thank you so much, Sandy. So I think we're inspired and reinvigorated. Yeah. Thank you so much. I think we were amazed, touched, we laughed. It was just amazing. Thank you so much, Mrs. Jones and Senator Representative Birch. I think they were able to touch on all the pillars of lifestyle medicine, right? Nutrition, mobility, the importance of relationship, focusing on community, having a purpose, and learning throughout your life. Just an amazing conversation. Thank you so much. Sandy, thank you for facilitating this invigorating conversation, and thank you to panelists for your willingness to share with us. We have to bottle that passion and commitment from our panelists. So this concludes our opening session. What a session it was. I want to provide you with just a few announcements as you prepare to enjoy our second virtual conference. First, we want to thank all of our sponsors and our exhibitors today. We appreciate your support. Do not forget to visit our virtual exhibitor hall to learn more about the sponsors and the exhibitors. Remember to pay attention to CEU messages throughout the day. Please enjoy our networking opportunities. And immediately after this session, you can join Bird Nerds Unite, a bird watching networking discussion. You'll find the link in the virtual conference space. Breakout sessions begin promptly at 10:30. Be sure to come back after the breakout sessions to the main room to enjoy singing by the Silver Notes at 11:30, just before our noon general session. Thank you so much.
Excellent job, y'all. Thank you.